perhaps best be called undivided wholeness in flowing movement. This view implies that flow is in some sense prior to that of the things that can be seen to form and dissolve in this flow. One can perhaps illustrate what is meant here by considering the stream of consciousness. This flux of awareness is not precisely definable, and yet it is evidently prior to the definable forms of thoughts and ideas which can be seen to form and dissolve in the flux like ripples, waves, and vortices in a flowing stream. There is a universal flux that cannot be defined explicitly, but which can be known only implicitly, as indicated by the explicitly definable forms and shapes. Some stable forms and some forms are unstable. They can be abstracted from the universal flux. In this flow, mind and matter are not separate substances. Rather, they are different aspects of one whole and unbroken movement. This is part of the spookiness of quantum physics that the orthodox establishment of science really hates to get into, because consciousness is not physical, and of course the basis of reality, coming from the classical Newtonian view, is that matter is primary and all else is secondary. Quantum physics has completely removed that assumption. Gary Zukov in The Dancing Wu Li Masters, an overview of the new physics, a very excellent, good overview. He notes that according to quantum field theory, fields alone are real. They are the substance of the universe and not matter. Matter, that is, particles, is simply the momentary manifestations of interacting fields, which, intangible and insubstantial as they are the only real things in the universe. Their interactions seem particle-like because fields interact very abruptly and in very minute regions of space. Quantum field theory is, of course, an outrageous contradiction in terms. A quantum is an indivisible whole. It is a small piece of something, while a field is a whole area of something. A quantum field is the juxtaposition of two irreconcilable concepts. In other words, it is a paradox. It defies our categorical imperative that something be either this or that, but not both. See, this is the assumption from classical physics. Well, the major contribution of quantum mechanics to Western thought, and there are many, may be its impact on the artificial categories by which we structure our perceptions, since ossified structures of perception are the prisons in which we unknowingly become prisoners. Quantum theory boldly states that something can be this and that, a wave and a particle. It makes no sense to ask which of these is really the true description. Both of them are required for a complete understanding. Then back on page 310, he notes, a point of view itself is limiting. To understand something is to give up some other way of conceiving it. Very interesting, this. This is another way of saying that the mind deals in forms of limitation. Nonetheless, there is a relationship between the content of awareness and the ability of the mind to transcend itself. Reality is what we take to be true. What we take to be true is what we believe. What we believe is based upon our perceptions. What we perceive depends on what we look for. What we look for depends upon what we think. What we think depends upon what we perceive. What we perceive determines what we believe. What we believe determines what we take to be true. What we take to be true is our reality. And that's just how it works. As a man thinketh, so is he, so says the Scripture. Paul Davies, the British physicist and science writer, in his book Other Worlds, Space, Superspace, and the Quantum Universe, remarkable text. Very, very interesting. This is an older text. It's Touchstone Books, let me get the date, 1982, the first Touchstone edition. In the prologue, The Unnoticed Revolution. Known broadly, this is on page 11 and 12. Known broadly as the quantum theory, it began with an attempt to explain certain technical aspects of subatomic physics. Since then, it has grown to incorporate most of modern microphysics, from elementary particles to lasers, and nobody seriously doubts that the theory is correct. What is at issue are the extraordinary consequences that follow if the theory is taken at face value. If accepted completely, literally, it leads to the conclusion that the world of our experience, the universe that we actually perceive, is not the only universe. Coexisting alongside it are countless billions of others, some almost identical to ours, others wildly different, inhabited by myriads of near carbon copies of ourselves in a gigantic multifoliate reality of parallel worlds. Science, it is usually believed, helps us to build a picture of objective reality, the world out there. With the advent of the quantum theory, that very reality appears to have crumbled to be replaced by something so revolutionary, so bizarre, that its consequences have not yet been properly faced. As we shall see, one can either accept the multiple reality of the parallel worlds or deny that a real world exists at all, independently of our perception of it. Laboratory experiments performed in the last few years have demonstrated that atoms and subatomic particles, which people usually envisage as microscopic things, are not really things at all, in the sense of having a well-defined, independent existence and a separate personal identity. Yet we are all made of atoms. The world about us seems to be directly, inevitably, to an identity crisis. Reality, inasmuch as it has any meaning at all, is not a property of the external world on its own, but it is intimately bound up with our perception of the world, our presence as conscious observers. Quantum theory reinstates the observer at the center of the stage. The entry of information into the consciousness of the observer is the fundamental step in the establishment of reality. Taken to its extreme, this idea implies that the universe only achieves a concrete existence as a result of this perception. It is created by its own inhabitants. Well, whether these latter paradoxical ideas are accepted or not, most physicists seem to agree that at least on the atomic level, matter remains in a state of suspended animation of unreality until an actual measurement or observation is performed. And this is the amazing, astonishing thing about quantum physics. Nothing is real until it's observed. Michael Talbot, in Beyond the Quantum, he's discussing, this is a Bantam Books, 1988, the Bantam edition. He says on page 180, actually he notes how physicist Freeman Dyson of the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton noted this: I cannot help thinking that our awareness of our own brains has something to do with the process which we call observation in atomic physics. That is to say, I think our consciousness is not just a passive epiphenomenon carried along by the chemical events in our brains, but it is an active agent forcing the molecular complexes to make choices between one quantum state and another. In other words, mind is already inherent in every electron, and the processes of human consciousness differ only in degree, but not in kind, from the processes of choice between quantum states which we call chance when they are made by electrons. Oh, that's a fascinating idea. In a universe that is infinitely